Thanks for staying here. Ah, that's the right run. Thank you. Okay. I'm talking about certification, as Kuba said, and I don't have a slide like about me or something, so I work for Magento since about a year. I was a freelance developer before that. First Magento site went online in March 2008. It still was pre-release. That was the last release candidate, and it was horror. Creating that site. I learned a lot before. I just was doing all kind of stuff, and since then I've been specifically focused on Magento, and yeah, enjoying it a lot, especially because I really enjoy working with community and people like Ivan and Damian and Alistair and Fabrizio Branca, and there are so many great developers out there, and you know, they're so smart, and I learn a lot, and I really enjoy being with those people. So I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to work with such people in projects. So anyway, a year ago I was curious to see what's going on behind the scenes, so I joined Magento, and it's been a lot of fun, and I get to go places like here and talk to you, which is very nice. Party last night and tonight. Okay. So anyway, what I'm going to talk about on topic. First, I'm going to talk, what is it, why, and how. So that's pretty much the logistical side of things. First half of the presentation. After that, I've got a part about more technical content. And when choosing the technical content, we had a look at some of the questions from the certification and how the results were coming in. And some of the results, some areas people generally tend to know more about, and some people don't know quite as much about. And admin HTML field renderers is one of them, and payment flow is the other. That doesn't mean nobody knows about them. Some people know them very well, but I just chose them because it felt like, okay, I'll just say something and maybe it's useful for some people, so that's great. Now that said, after this presentation, we will be giving away 2 vouchers. So I'll just have 2 simple questions, or I don't know the questions yet. I got to think of something, and whoever answers or gets the closest answer gets a free certification for voucher. Plus, we also have the opportunity of just after this presentation going 200 meters to a certification testing center here for 10 spots. 3 still are available, and there you can take the certification for half price. And for the remainder of the year, you can get a retake voucher for free, right? So basically you get a test go, and if you pass, great. And if you don't pass, well, okay, no problem, you can take it again. Once you have the retake voucher, you can, as Kuba said, it's valid for a year. So, who is interested in taking the certification later on? Okay, come on, 3 people. 3 additional people who's not yet registered. Okay, because it's a really good chance, right? I mean, you just get to save money, basically. So, I like that. Yeah, okay. Good, okay. So what is it? Way back, brief preview here, review. So in the beginning, when the whole Magento development started, how did people go about developing Magento sites? They didn't know any better. At least I didn't know any better, right? As long as I got it to do what I wanted it to do, everything was good. I wasn't lucky and worked with a core team or anything. It was like, oh boy, I have 10,000 files, and I kind of have to figure out what's going on. So anyway, that's pretty much how it started. And what happened, of course, people got stuck on those versions. I know many projects that still are on 1.3 or even 1.2. Right, because they can't upgrade, and they don't make enough money to redo the whole store. And probably those are not the only ones. There are hundreds of shops there. So people learned a lot doing it, and then after some time, progressed. Enterprise Edition came out, and finally people got the idea. Okay, I'd better move everything into modules. And then I had a module, and well, that was a bit better, but still we had module conflicts, right? So modules aren't like the fix-all solution, but at least it's getting better. There were no real known best practices. Everybody just was guessing their way around. So finally, things were progressing quite nicely, and people got to work in a more structured manner. And suddenly, I noticed over time there came a lot of blog posts about best practices, how to do things right, what works better. People were discovering new ways how to do things, like instead of rewriting grids and adding HTML, use observers, all kind of things that people just didn't know about beforehand and were blogging about it. So things were becoming better, and everybody was putting very high value on upgradability, compatibility, and making sure the module actually does what it should do without any side effects, right? Accountability. And now, the last couple of months, what I've noticed happening in the whole developer community, there's a whole lot of quality focus. Basically, we have a lot more testing than before. I mean, some people like Ivan started very early with test-driven development, but because the core didn't provide a framework for it, it's still pretty rare in Magento, you know, for Magento developers to use it globally. Right? But still, there's a big push here. New tools are coming out like Mage Behead, Mage PHP spec integration for Magento, new versions. A lot of people are starting using continuous integration or heading that way. So the whole quality is rising of the extent of how people work and create. So you still find the odd developer who does things like back in 2009, just putting stuff into app code local, whatever. You still find that, but it's getting much rarer, and people know, okay, that should be done in this way and not that way. And actually, the certification was released in December 2011, which made a big difference from what I was seeing, because suddenly it even made sense to say, okay, now I have to learn the right way to do it, right, officially. Not only because it's better and easier to upgrade and maintain, but also, if I ever want to become certified, I'd better know how to do things right. So the certification was created by an advisory board using some kind of strict process, so there was a lot of investment made into building it, and it's still based on 1.5, but we will be updating that sometime early next year to 1.7. And once Magento 2 arrives, we will have, as I answered yesterday for one of the questions here, we will have 2 certifications at the supporting both for a while. Good. So there are 2 variations. We have the Certified Developer and Certified Developer Plus. What's the difference? Well, the Plus exam also contains challenge questions, which are just more detailed questions on Magento core, and it also contains questions to the Enterprise Edition. Right, so that's the Plus. And yep. When you get certified, you get an entry in the certification directory. You can search by name or country and so on. So you get your own little profile in there. You can upload a picture, what kind of stuff you do. And especially, you can enter your partner ID here if you work for a partner. And then on the partner listing, the number of certified developers are shown, which is, of course, for prospective customers, a big incentive to choose a partner with many certified developers. Just kind of handy. So why take it? This is a quote I've heard a lot. So while I was preparing for the exam, I learned so much, you know, how to do things. Because everybody focuses in day-to-day work on specific parts. So you become maybe an expert on search or import-export or, I don't know, shipping modules or whatever. You know that part of Magento really well. But there are other parts of Magento many people never had a chance to look at it all. I mean, yeah, price rules. I learned a lot today, so thanks. That was very good. I don't know. It's just a natural way that happens. I think almost nobody besides Ivan knows all of Magento, right? So, yes, there you go. Nobody knows all of Magento. Who knows how the tax is calculated? Not me. Okay, anyway. So, the exam actually is a good incentive to look into those parts that you don't know yet, right? And yeah, almost everybody who had some time to prepare, afterwards he says, okay, now I know things I'm actually using in day-to-day work that make me a better developer for Magento, just because I wanted to get certified. It's also easier to justify higher wages. You know, wherever you live, if you're certified, and there are 2 competing quotes, one's from a certified developer, one's from a non-certified developer, okay, who has an easier job justifying the wages, right? So makes a lot of sense here. On many job postings, you can see Magento certified developers are preferred. So, well, as a certified developer, well, yeah, it's easier to get the job you want by the company you want. That said, of course, it's pretty easy to get a job as a Magento developer anyway. But you know, sometimes there are sweet little companies, and you think, like, oh yeah, I want to work there. They do the the really nice project. So yeah. Plus, for partners, you stand out through the number of certified developers. So that's an important reason too. Okay, how to get certified? We have, for the preparation, we have not a lot of material, but some material. One's the study guide, which is a PDF. It can be downloaded freely from the site. It lists the exam areas, so every content area that's covered by the exam is listed there, together with a percentage, like, oh, I'm making these up right now, but maybe catalogs 8%, checkouts 10%, sales rules is 5%, something like that. So you have an idea about how much each area makes, you know, of the total number of questions. Plus, there are questions in there, like, how does this and this work? And these questions are open questions, so you don't have like a specific answer. And you also find pointers into the code base. Because Magento, as you probably know, at least Magento 1, does not have like huge amounts of documentations, right? So how do we learn? We learn as developers by looking into the code, because we have to. So this is kind of like, okay, we're doing what you do anyway. To code Magento, you have to be able to read the code, but you get some hinters, some pointers to where to look into the code to answer these specific questions. So that's one way we try to help people prepare. The other thing we created is the study group moderator guide. The idea behind the moderator study group kit is to social learning. It's more fun to learn together. So if you're in a study group, you can learn together, and it organizes the whole content into 11 sections, and the whole thing is organized into 12 meetings. So the first meeting just is kind of to get the organization going, and then 11 meetings. Could be a weekly meeting. Of course, you choose your time frame yourself. And there are exercises included. So you can see, okay, in order to learn this content area, if I create these modules, then I'm in a pretty good shape that I can kind of see, okay, these are the challenges this content area provides, and that's how I get around it. Plus, there are some sample solutions in there. But the real value of the moderator kit is, for one, it structures the content, so it's not like this huge amount of content to cover. It's more like, yeah, it's, you know, just you can focus on one part at a time, plus the exercises. If you do all the exercises, or maybe the exercises of the parts where you don't know Magento so well, I say you're in good shape to pass the exam, definitely. Okay. To take the exam, you can register at any Prometric testing center. The standard exam, you have 90 minutes. The plus exam, you have 120 minutes because there are 10 more questions or something. And yeah, if you fail the first time, you have to wait 15 days until you retake the test. After that, it's a 90-day test thereafter. That's, by the way, another reason why it's a good idea to do the exam today, because then you get to retake this year and don't have, you know, otherwise, yeah, you can't benefit from the free retake because of a 90-day waiting period. Okay, you just go to this URL. I don't have a fancy QR code, but it's pretty easy. You'll manage. Buy a voucher, find a testing center, register to take the exam. So you can make your own appointment. You don't have to wait for, you know, a specific time, like when is the next certification happening. You can choose your own time and make an appointment, and then you just take the exam, and you know immediately afterwards if you passed or not. So that's good. Okay, so that's the formal part. Now let's look at something a little more technical here. So I didn't really have a good transition to the technical part, so I decided, okay, sit comfortably, take a deep breath, relax, and let's have a look at this. So this part, admin HTML field renderers they're not difficult, they're pretty easy, and most of the time they just kind of work in the background, and I think that's why most people don't really know about them. I didn't know about them for a long time and built plenty of backend forms and grids and everything, so anyway, so let's have a look at those. So renderers put elements into context. So normally if I have a backend form and add an element like a width select or a text field or whatever, that's what I get. But that's not the only thing that's being rendered, because you have the whole table structure in there, and the renderer just applies the context around the actual field HTML. So that's what they're there for. And they're used for the widget forms of the admin HTML and also for the system configuration that's generated through the system XML. Okay, let's start with the widget forms first. So when I add a field, when I add a field to a form widget, usually the standard way to do it would be you extend from admin HTML widget form block, and in prepare form you create an instance of variant data form, call add field set and add field, and those will be the field that's rendered. So far there's no renderer involved here, right? So what happens is in the parent class, in prepare layout, a couple of default renderers are set. Right. So there are 3 different renderers: element renderer, field set renderer, and field set element renderer. And the difference here is, if I add a field to the form instance directly, like form add field, the element renderer is used. And for the field set renderer is used, and if I add a field to the field set, then it's the field set element renderer that's being used. So you have 3 different types of context for fields, and each of those can be customized with a custom renderer. And to do that, it's very simple. All you need to do is you specify the renderer as another option for the field. Right. The renderer, if you want to create your own renderer, what you need to do is you need to implement the renderer interface. And that's one of the few cases where you actually have a real interface usage. It's not just an empty file called interface. So in this case, the method you have to implement is render. And if you just want to render a custom template, just extend regular template block and just return this to HTML, for example. Right. So that's pretty simple. And for system configuration, you can also use renderers. Now, for system configuration, we don't implement the block class ourselves, so we can't really use prepare form and to set the renderer. Instead, we do it through system XML. The default field renderer is specified in the form class that usually renders the whole admin area, and it's that's the default renderer, and it's set in the system config form block. Now, to customize it, all I need to do is I need to specify the front-end model. Now, the front-end raw model actually is a block class. That confused me for a while, but it's a block, right? Otherwise, it's the same thing as before for the standard renderer. So you just specify it there. Afterwards, you just implement it. I usually tend to extend the regular admin HTML field renderer because then it's less work. And the magic method here is, well, render is already implemented, but you could override it to set maybe, if you don't want any scoping to be applied or something, you can do it that way. And get element HTML is whatever returns the real element there. So after that, with that, you're free to do whatever you want to do: custom templates, interactive, Ajax buttons, whatever. It's very simple to implement, right? So yeah, inside of the template, you can always get the element using get element and create it from there. So the element is set on the renderer instance. All right, so that was a warm-up. Let's move on a little towards part 2, which is the payment flow. By the way, let's back up 2 steps here. Any questions regarding field renderers? A kind of useful tool. It could work fine without knowing about them, but once I started knowing about them, I just started using them because, sometimes it's just what you need. Okay. So question goes, who already worked with renderers? Just, because, okay, couple, all of them. Damn, I feel stupid now. Because I spent like 2.5 years working with Magento not knowing about them. Okay, there you go. Cool, hope you still enjoyed it and I was like talking, crap. Okay, payment flow. First, who already, now I'll ask beforehand, right? Who already created payment modules here? Quite a few, but not quite as many. Okay, good. Okay, so prerequisites before we can actually talk about the payment flow here would be, we have 2 different versions of checkout. We have the one-page checkout, and we have the multi-address checkout. And depending on what types, if you have a payment provider, depending on the way you interface with the payment provider, it might not work in every case. So normally, the one-page checkout is a lot easier to implement in all cases. Multi-address checkout, in some cases, it gets a little messy because the multi-address checkout creates an order instance for each address that's being created and a different payment for each address. So it's not that clean. So we have two main actors here. One's the payment method, and one is the actual payment info data. Right. So the method knows how to interact with the payment gateway or how to process a payment, and if there is additional data that comes with that's needed, that would be part of the payment info. So the payment method processes the payment transactions, and each payment method is identified by a unique code and a model, and the model just is specified in the configuration under global payment, then whatever your code is, and the model. And it extends from Mage payment model method abstract. Now the payment info stores the transaction data. For example, well, you probably wouldn't want to store credit card info, but maybe account information or some other kind of tokens or whatever you need to store. And they also provide a wrapper for the payment method. So the quote and the order normally don't work with the payment method instance directly, but they just work through the payment info classes. So here we go. Sales quote payment and sales order payment are the two payment info instances classes you usually work with. So if you are in a quote and you call get payment, you get the quote payment info instance. If you have order and you call get payment, you get the order payment instance. So it's quite easy to get at the info instance. And when you have the info instance and you call get method instance, you get your payment method instance. Right? Or on the other hand, if you have the payment method, like you're implementing it, you can always call get info instance to get the info instance. So that's how you reach all the different information you might need. So there are a number of payment actions Magento defined. One's authorized, which is generally used to authorize some funds. They have to be captured later. Capture actually then takes care of gathering the funds that have been authorized previously. Void is implementation specific actually, so it could release funds that have been captured and authorized but not captured, or it could void a transaction. So whatever your payment gateway, sometimes depending on what you want to implement, that might be something you need. And credit memo just as a synonym for refund. Okay. Still not done with the prerequisite. So each order has a state, and each state can have order status values, right? The order states are predefined in the order model. This is pretty just, I'm generalizing quite a lot here, but generally when an order is created, it's in state new or payment pending. If it's either invoice or shipped, it's in state processing usually. If it's invoice and shipped, it's set to complete. And if it's also refunded, the complete amount, it's closed. So those are the general states, and each of these states can have, you can define your own statuses. Now, okay, almost there. When you are implementing a payment method, they generally fall into one of these three types of payment methods. They're very simple payment methods where you don't interface with an external payment gateway, like check MO or invoice or something like that. All you do is the customer just sends the payment information to the Magento host, and no further processing needs to be done. On the sometimes a little more complex variant is the customer sends the payment info to the Magento host, and then the Magento host contacts some, the server contacts some external API to verify some data or to authorize the funds or whatever, right? So that's one way. The other thing that's actually much more common nowadays is the customer sends the information directly to the payment provider, and then the payment provider simply informs Magento if the payment was successful or not, right? So the actual payment data doesn't get into contact with Magento, and since the PCI DSS standard was introduced, that's become pretty much the norm, right? Back when Magento was created, actually this was pretty much the norm. Okay, so finally, that's prerequisites out of the way. Let's have a look at how to hook into the whole payment flow, because payment gateways tend to have very different setups, and it's not only these three types of payment modules, but I don't know, I've done like a handful of payment modules, and each one was quite different. Yeah, some were very old APIs, kind of like very strange data formats and verification steps that made no sense at all. Some were very cool. Anyway, it's very different, and Magento API just programming API here tries to compensate them all. So what have we got? We have the two types of checkout here, one-page and multi-shipping. When the customer hits submit, save order is called, right, after the order is submitted, which is passed to the service quote model, which then basically is used to transform the quote to an order. And then on the order, place is called, calls place payment. And the same is called directly if you have multi-shipping. It loops over each target address, destination address, and for each destination address an order is created, and then once again it calls place directly on each order. Okay. So from there on, we finally are delegated to the info instance, to the order info instance, and place is called. And that's the main method that contains a lot of the payment flow logic. So this is just how you end up in that place, and there we can start, you know, it's not one of the nice short methods, it's a little bit longer. For me, on my laptop, it doesn't fit on one screen, so it's, I don't know, it took me some time to kind of take it apart and figure out what's actually going on. And the next couple of slides is like the different ways how, you know, to process the information through there and how we can hook into it to get the desired result. Okay, so this is order payment place. First, the initialization needed flag is checked. So if that is true, the first thing we get is a call to initialize on our currently being implemented payment method. Okay. Initialize gets two values. It gets the configured value of payment action and a state object, which is just a variant object instance. And the state object, just you can set some values on it, and they will be used to set the state and status later on the order once you're finished with initializing the whole thing. This call, initialize, by default it does nothing. So you can do whatever you need to do in there, right? It's like just a hook method. So that's first case, simple case, and sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's all you need. Simple module, but yeah. Great. Now, if is initialized as false, the next thing Magento does, it checks the value of payment action. And it uses getConfig data, so basically you can configure the config data in the, well, config XML, of course, under payment, the payment code, and payment action. So what are the possible values there? The first value is nothing, if that node doesn't exist. What happens then is you get the order state new, and you can configure the order status, or if it's not set, it's pending. So once again, you might just, that might be all you need, right? If you have a very simple payment module, that just basically no work done, you just implement the method, implement the model, but no methods, and that's what you get in that case. So, but what's if the payment action is configured, what are the possible values I can set it to? Well, I can set it to order, authorize, or authorize capture. Sound familiar? Yeah. Now, order isn't actually used in the core currently, but it's still valid. So, whenever order is specified as a payment action, what happens is it calls _order on the payment info on the order info instance, right? So once it's order, authorize calls authorize, and authorize capture calls capture. So that's the next steps of flow. Now we'll have a look at each of these. What happened next? So we just specify a value in the config XML. That's the part to remember. And depending on what we specify, a different hook method will be called. So if we specify order, we end up in our payment method instance, and order is called. Easy enough. And we receive the info instance and the amount to be captured. We can implement order as needed. So that's another hook method. Whatever I need to do there, I'm good. Afterwards, the order state is processing or payment review, and the order status is basically what we get as order status. If we don't set the order status, that each state also has a default order status. Okay, but as I said, order isn't actually used in the core. What is used is authorized. So for authorized, payment method instance authorize is called. And once again, by default, authorize does nothing, so that's what you would implement. And afterwards, we have processing or payment review, and we're set. Now, the order process is 100% identical to the authorized process except for the method names. At one point order is called, and another point it's authorized is called, right? Technically, otherwise there's no difference. So whatever matches what you want to do better, just go ahead and use whatever you prefer. Now, the third payment action is authorized capture here. And what happened next is, in order to capture funds, Magento needs an invoice. So it first calls capture on the info instance with no argument, or with a null argument, which then calls, because no invoice was passed, it calls prepare invoice on the order, and then capture on the invoice, and then that, on the other hand, calls capture on the info instance with the invoice. So all of this here is simply just creating the invoice instance. Our payment method hasn't been involved yet at all. What we now get is the method capture. And we're free to implement that once again as needed. Right. So afterwards, we have processing or payment review and order status. So here you could authorize and capture funds immediately, whatever you need to do. Okay, so that's actually not a lot of work. Most of the time, you just implement 1 or 2 methods, or if your payment gateway supports them all, you just implement even more, and you're set. But how about this case where the customer submits the data to the provider, and then the provider just, the gateway, informs Magento about the state of the payment? Well, in that case, if you want to use multi-shipping, you're basically out of luck, first of all, right? So what is pretty easy to support, though, on the other hand, is yeah, I see people laughing. Yeah. I don't know. It's a common story. People give a quote, like partners give a quote for projects. Oh yeah, Magento has multi-shipping, sure. And yeah, we have hundreds of available payment modules. And then they find out, oh no, only 10% of the payments per modules actually work with multi-shipping, right? Okay, you're familiar with that. Yeah. Anyway, so let's have a look at one page here. So the first option to redirect somebody to the payment gateway would be directly after choosing the payment method. So in order to do that, what you need to implement is the method getCheckoutRedirectURL. So if this returns an invalid URL, as soon as the customer clicks on the continue button, Magento will send a location redirect header, and the customer will be sent off to the payment provider. And yeah, just implement that as needed. No order is created at this time. So on the upside, you don't have, like if the customer then abandons the payment process at that point, you don't have old, half-finished orders lying around the database. And you need to create the order after the customer is returned. The second option is you redirect the customer after the review step. So he goes through all the one-page checkout, and finally he clicks submit order, and then you redirect him. And that's basically all you have to do is you just implement get checkout redirect URL. Oh, wait. Okay, copy and paste error. Sorry? Save order redirect URL or something, I don't know. So there's a different method here. I'll fix it before we upload it, right? So there's a different method that you need to implement, and otherwise it's the same. You just return the URL, and the customer is redirected there. So the order will be created at that point in time in the database, and you will be responsible for somehow updating the order later on. So maybe some cron job that cleans it up if the customer abandoned the checkout process, or if it's a successful payment, or if it's a failure, as soon as Magento gets notified, you need to take care of doing that. And basically you have one method here, it's register capture notification. It's part of the info instance, the order info instance, that's quite handy to use to update the whole order with whatever result you have. Okay, so what we haven't talked about yet is the payment data itself. So for payment data handling, as soon as the customer enters his information in the form and clicks on save payment, what happens is the form is submitted, and on the quote info instance, import data is called, which calls assign data on the payment method instance. Right, so that's how that's the method you can implement if needed to store some data, to validate something, whatever you need to do. Now, if you want to persist data, you get a key value storage as part of the info instance, and that's set additional information. So you don't need to create your own tables, you don't need to extend core tables or anything like that. All you need to do is just call set additional information on the info instance, and you can always retrieve it with get additional information with a specific key, and storing and saving will be handled for you. In addition to giving you the option to persist the data, the data is also added to the payment info instance, so you can always get the data from there too. Okay, so to summarize, you configure the model class, you specify an active node and the payment action, and then you just create the model and implement the hook methods you need to implement. And for redirect payments, you also have to implement, of course, the controllers to take care of that and the views or whatever you need to do there. So all in all, I think it's a rather flexible system. It does have a couple of downsides, like generally all the information is always first sent to the Magento host. If you want to stop that happening, you have to work on a JavaScript level, kind of disable the field after the customer clicks continue, or different kinds of stuff in order to build a redirect URL before redirecting. But it's all possible. On the PHP side, you have a pretty flexible framework that can cover almost all cases. Okay, so well, I already talked about the resources we have regarding the certification. We offer a number of trainings for Magento U. There are a number of online trainings. Others, check us out. We're on magento.com/training. I say check it out because when normally I'm the guy who gets to do the trainings, lucky me. So I'd love to work with you. So yeah, please check them out, and it would be great, to go. And that's the perks of the job. I really enjoy getting to know people and working with them. Okay, so let's see. Any questions? Yes.
I've got a question regarding payment modules. I've created one payment module, and sometimes we have problem with payment review status. When something went wrong with payment, the order is stuck on this status, and a customer cannot edit the order or something like this. Is it any easy option to edit or to cancel this order?
It's not easy out of the box, so you probably would want to implement that as part of the payment module, and the capture notification callback method, hook method I mentioned earlier, can be used easily to unstuck it. That's what I've used in the past. Right? So you can then later on, if the customer actually has reviewed the payment, you can just update it from there, status. So, but no, out of the box, there's no easy way to switch state back to something else that I know of. Yeah.
About this question, I think I can also help. I was doing the module for Paybox payment method for France, and we have the same problem that customer sometimes does not return from the payment gateway, and sometimes he doesn't pay, and we don't get any information from the Paybox. We don't know why it does happen. Sometimes it happens, and the best way is to check how does the payment session look like per payment session gateway. For example, Paybox allows you to make 3 attempts to pass your valid credit card and pay for your payment. And each session, when you can check it, takes 10 minutes. So we made a cron job that catches all the orders that its last updated date is older than 30 minutes, and its status is not a status that it's not a status valid that it was paid by Paybox, and we just cancel them because we know that we won't have any information from Paybox after that time. So it also would be helpful.
Right. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, cron job is probably a usual way to deal with that on whatever parameters the implementation specific parameters. Yeah.
I think you missed one of the important flows, which is creating orders through admin when you also have the payment step. And from what I've seen, quite often the modules don't work there correctly. And also, what I'm seeing in the US market, a lot of payment methods are actually adopting a fourth type of flow, which is the post that you enter a credit card on Magento fields, but the form post goes to the third-party server. If you want to study how it's done in Magento, you should look into authorize.net direct post method, and it's even a totally different flow from what I remember.
Thank you. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I left out the admin part because limited time for this presentation. Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll look at the authorize.net because it's not used in Germany. I'd never used it at all. I did create a couple of places where the post data was posted directly to the payment gateway. And but I did that through JavaScript, like SaferPay is one example that comes to my mind, just by changing the form, basically because I needed to do some stuff there. Oh, Ivan, great.
I have also some thoughts about such kind of payment posting, because recently we also did some payment method that fully submits all the credit card data directly via JavaScript to third-party server. And the solution that we came up, it was a bit different than authorize.net. It was a way to hook one-page checkout process, and then we just place payment data to some third-party server, return back and do the same stuff like you are redirected there, but you just have previously saved the order, and then you are receiving data that needs to be passed to some third-party system, and then it gets submitted there, and you are returned back to acceptance page.
Okay, so like get like a token or an ID, and later on you just use that further on. Yeah, that's a common step there. Cool. So did you post the data to the payment gateway directly after the payment method is checked, or after the review step?
Actually, we mark fields as non-postable.
Yeah.
So we don't give names to these payment fields, but we store this data in JavaScript in buffer. And after we receive a save order action response, we can proceed with sending this data to payment method by JavaScript.
Okay. After the save order step.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly how I did it for the SaferPay one too. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
I have a question directly related with the certification types. Is there any reason why Magento Developer Plus certificate is not an add-on for the regular? And do you plan to?
Good question.
Maybe do you plan to change it, because that's?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's as far it's mainly logistical issues. How it's not easy to build the system in that way for some reason. I don't know the details. It's administrative stuff. So in the end, they said, okay, if you want to do that, it will be another 4 months or something till we can roll it out. So we just decided, okay, we'll do it this way. So yeah, if you do the Plus certification, you can't like just get the standard one and fail on the Plus. You just have to do the whole certification. It's either one or the other. So thanks for asking. I missed that point, and yeah, I don't have a good answer.
I have a question regarding the moderator group kit. I personally passed the certification in April this year, and blogged about some of my experience, and people commenting on it regarding is it enough to use this kit to prepare to the exam?
Well, interesting. I'll read the comments for sure. I don't know. All I can say is that if the people do the exercises, right? I mean, it's not enough just reading through it. You have to create the modules. You have to do the work. There's no way around it, which I actually think is good, right? There shouldn't be a way to easily just kind of fake it. I don't like faking. Anyway, in that case, yeah, you won't be ready. If you do the work, I think you would be ready, honestly. I can't imagine how it's possible to not pass it if you did the exercises. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, that's just what I think. Thanks. That said, it's not regarding the difficulty of the exam. Some people say it's easy. Some people say it's very difficult. So obviously it's very personal, right? It's not objective difficulty here. For that reason, I would really encourage you just to try it once, and then you know where you are at. Many people that went in and they're like, oh, I don't know, yeah, I'm gonna try it because it's free to retake, and they passed, right? So okay, great. Just get it over with, and then you've got it. Okay.
What changes are planned while switching from 1.5 to 1.7 as the base of the exam?
What changes? Well, we have a number of questions that we will be revising for several reasons. Most of them they're either too difficult or too easy. There won't be a huge number of them, but there are a few. And also we will be updating to reflect the changes in the MMDB, multiple database structure. So you looked at the talk today, so it's all like fresh and clear in your mind right now. Another good reason to go and do it. No, that's one of the things, plus group prizes, for example, will be added to it, right? Because that's a new feature. That's all that I've got in my mind right now.
So basically just some cleaning up the questions from 1.5 and adding the question considering the changes in the version, yes?
Yeah, well, for cleaning up, we're not just getting rid of questions, we're adding new ones instead, right? So, yeah.
Thanks.
I have a quick question. On the Zen certificate, I think on the older version, not 5.3, there were some online tests to just check on which level are you, and there were some parts you can see on which you suck and on which are you okay. Do you plan something similar for Magento? And also a second smaller question, are there any more example questions beside those 4 on the study guide? Thank you.
So good question. It would be great to have something like that, but afraid, no. The reason being, when during the certification was created, in order to come up with a couple of hundred questions, like 4 times the amount of questions were written and reviewed and beta tested and alpha tested, beta. So it was a very big investment creating it so far. Really, a lot of people worked at it for a long time. So yeah, creating another totally different exam just for people to check would be another very big investment at the time. It's yeah, so much going on, Magento 2, updating this one, everything. It just probably won't happen. Maybe in future, if we have over time create additional versions, like maybe every year. I don't know. I don't know about any plans about that, but maybe there will be additional updates. Maybe at one point we will have enough questions that it's possible, but at the moment not. So that said, for each certification there are actually 2 variants, right? So if you retake, it will be slightly different, but the topic areas will still be the same. Okay, seems like we're done. Okay, thank you very much. It's been an honor to be here, and thanks also to Kuba for inviting me here and everything. It's I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a great conference. And yeah, good job. Thank you for making it happen.